never quite know where to put these things. Okay. Thank you all for being here, and thank you, Sarah Rose and Krista, for imagining this kind of organization. I find it just really thrilling, and I'm always loving to kind of see what's happening with it from afar. So thanks for including me, and James, what a wonderful presentation on your work. Just really stunning stuff. Today I'm going to talk to you a little about my new book, Goners, and share some poems from it, and then kind of hopefully transition into what I'm working on now, which is kind of a shift from diminishment to abundance, so a different kind of work. I wanted to start off by reading a little excerpt from the note on process that opens the book so that I can establish for everyone the foundational constraint I'm using throughout the book itself. So the poems in Goners are lipograms, which is writing that excludes one or more letters. Specifically, I'm working with a variation of the beautiful outlaw. Lipograms just have really luscious names in general. A lipogram that does not use the letters in the names of the endangered animals in the titles, a variation I've come to call an extinction. To explore what happens when what is endangered is instead absent, gone. The piece Cheetah, for instance, uses 21 of 26 letters, all but A, C, E, H, and T. So no thee, no A, no cats, no being, no are or were or was, no choice, no etc. The formal strategy of the lipogram nods to global trends regarding climate change and strategies of elimination, eliminating carbon emissions, red meat consumption, plastic, and so on. I'm not writing about endangered species. I'm writing without them, attempting to imagine in a linguistic landscape the ways that loss would be registered and felt or failed to be. Building off Anna Lowenhaupt Tsing's language from The Mushroom at the End of the World on the possibility of life in capitalist ruins, I've come to think of the lipogram as an art of living on a dying planet. As a formal strategy, and in thinking of the English language as a metonym for Western hegemony, the lipogram seems like a play on or performance of capitalist ruins, a record of the fallout, centered on erosive energies. Perhaps the lipogram is an experiment in ruining language, all the while reveling in its resilience, stunting the relationship between mastery and writing, and creating compositional events in which we're asked to consider what's at stake in being made to slow down, and what happens when we put sugar in the tank of language, raging against the machine. The first piece that I'm going to share is the species in the title is an akakae, which is a Hawaiian honey creeper. And the thing that kind of kept coming up time and time again when researching the endangered animal that I was kind of writing through or writing in the absence of was that the reason for their endangerment was deforestation. In the case of the akakae, deforestation because of resort building. In the case of many of the other animals throughout this, deforestation because of animal agriculture and a desire for meat. So the very kind of reality of a desire for dead animals and to consume dead animals has led to a proliferation of dead animals was really kind of present with me throughout, and you might kind of hear kind of glimpses of that in some of the language. Akakae, an extinction. Conscious of nightly symbols forming on historic forts, how to unfold, unmoor, unmission, to join, issuing forth your country into my country. So hot, so unbound, not occupying, but simply touching. My own tropic cools, this fusing isthmus shorts. Dibs on unwounding. Stop this posturing, this conviction disposition, thoroughly mining this bituminous night for lost hours. Dust gluttonous, tumor thorough, pumicing our moon's bright foot, involving full-grown minors or mirrors in this whodunit, trying not to, but noticing this world's voluminous booty, flossing with history's thong, with history's wrongs showing. Monolithic thoughts build phobic logics. It's on us to unbuild. Clog this porous wisdom with your good, or mostly good, oil. Oil's a weird thing because sometimes we can think about oil context in which has positive and negative connotations. So what a strange little object. Lemur and extinction. Thinking is a shanty boat I go onto on this good Ohio night. What is sight to a window? What is a window's fantasy? Vision goofs, saws in two. What was, wasn't. Is a scab cash that was a body's savings? Is a body a ghost's citation? A ghost's stowaway past? Winnow this instant as if it is chaff. I saw a body that wasn't a body. A shopping bag posing as snow atop hay. A twin pawning a notion of two. In this invitational, a ghost fights its sinking. Not a job I'd want. What widows a window? No gazing? No noticing that goat? That hint of noon on that happy stoop? That siphon in that gas tank? That kind of aching, hatching knowing is? Next, I'm going to read the first Extinction that I finished in total, and it was the one that kind of let me know that I could stick with this thing and move toward it. And the other thing that kind of became revealed to me as writing these is that how poetry felt like a really perfectly suited genre for entertaining these questions of endangerment and extinction, because questions of endangerment and extinction really are questions of value and what we think deserves to exist in the world, and thus what we fight to preserve. And poetry kind of always has this contested kind of role in contemporary culture, and so it's always kind of bound up to these questions of does it still exist? Does it deserve to exist? What kinds of attention should we give to it? So I found really working through these questions in terms of the endangered species in poetry felt like a really interesting alignment that kept kind of enlivening me time and again in the writing of these, and really creating a lot of permissions in this kind of genre that's contested as a meaningful 21st century genre sometimes by people. Not by me, not by you, not by probably a lot of you. Cheetah and extinction. My folks sold moon yolk, forks of limp sun, no pow, so surly bombs, no ping, so surly guns, no jig, so forlorn proms. My mood is missing, my limbs no rooms for birds. Your SUV runs on skim milk, syrup, piss, mows down droopy blooms, mills silky wounds in woods. Giddy up womb, sing slow-mo vows for girls, boys, ponds of gold locks, blonde minnows, pounds of bling. Sing sorry for killing wings, for killing floors your mop lulls. Spill. Living is frigid wound or sloppy diss. Sound off. Grim voids go on. Unloop. Jury of punks, of fools, growl, boo, or lip, no sin found. Look, sub-grin for grim, usurp glib dominions, prowl pro-prowl soil, fond of food, you pork pigs, poof, Poor pigs in your body's slum. Sniff, sniff. Found, profound. Lungs unfold, grow. You, born proud, pom-poms up. Lump sum or dim sum. Win now or nil. I is form, is us plug, is solo fling, is void or ibis, is LOL. Poor film, minus wow, missing swigs of rum, pours of gin, only moss woos rock, wood woos will, pus woos oozy, fin. Is grim, fins of wood spook us, rob our Lord's mind. Sumo king of sulk, bow down. No wig will unspy you. Your own billowing eye bills you for ussing, for eye's division. In this poem that I'm about to read, there's a shift in the penultimate line that you would see more readily than you might hear it. So let me alert you to it, so hopefully when we arrive at it, you'll catch the distinction being made. I say it shifts from aggro to aggro, and the first aggro is the prefix aggro, as in agricultural, and the second is aggro in terms of a descriptor for aggression or violence. So just a little note to you here with our qui-we. Qui-we and extinction. Flush forward to now. My harlot remnant opposed the haggle. Maybe gastronomy gave more to the world than gene therapy overall. My lament, sponsored by my damages. A story on wellness's edge, forgotten as a globe. The aloha ghost long ago harmed by a voyager. We gave the sea a sampler of flotsam. The sea preferred none of what we gave. Bon voyage, dear anthropomorph. The fever, like an earth, has thawed. The onlooker weans her own eyes off the handsome loam. The go-between between growth and harvest. The besotted spore. How have we gone from aggro to aggro, from leaf to leaflet? The pamphleteer hankers for new goals and for more paper, fresh as wet blood. You'll likely recall that the first piece that I read you shares a title with the piece I'm about to read, which is Akakae, the Hawaiian honey creeper. And this one's also called Akakae because each of the poems in the book have a companion piece. I like to think of this book as kind of my demented arc, playing on the homophone arc, A-R-C. And this idea of a broken trajectory. And so each piece has a companion piece. So there are two poems for each of the animals that appear in a title. And this is to play on the story of the Ark, of Noah's Ark, and these founding mythologies about the human capacity to intervene in a meaningful way in terms of preservation, right? And this kind of founding mythology for a lot of people in the US especially. Akakae, an extinction. Thought sumptuous, this skin thought hungry gown, mouthing off to its own dough, this youthful body, silo still, in pounding storms, scrubbing stupidity off this truly bright moon. Bluntly put, this body is Q-tip's trough, dip in. Critics flinch, but food isn't just for mouths. Light is photo's grub, innocuous potion. Slough off this triumph notion. Wood should not rot, but it rots. Sorry to limbs, sorry to gibbons, sorry to hobos bound not to find north or south old stops. thorough or not. This jinx is rough, flimsy quiz, how to undo it. If now word upon word is wordsmith's tumor, if now blight is ousting frost, how to proctor unbirth, how to win this lost bowl with history's surplus of wind-tristing birds, blinding us from punting through the posts. My very football literate friend likes to kind of point out to me when I read this poem, Kristi, you can't score punting through the posts. I said, well, that's a good way to win a lost bowl then, isn't it? No scoring. So who's more accurate? There. Poet logic. Koala, an extinction. Different fires require different fixes. Wetness isn't it every time. Did Muir grieve missing species preceding densities? See their missingness, the edges misgivings, perceive the quinces didn't preserve. Residues extend remembering, the tide venturing in, the drying spume, its spine, the spirit vein, deveined, deemed excess. We experienced judgment when wind whipped us, meted mischief by describing. Fruit is a tree's sequence, ruined by the bite. Who isn't, though? Get even, Eve. Is this triggering? This being minted by suffering? The minute, but this isn't time. Try twice. The minute, the determining many, teensy thing, the seeming. I read this poem because it's one of two poems in the books that, dear friends who have spent a lot of time with my work in a very kind of generous way have noted, oh, there's a slippage here. In this koala, obviously an O shouldn't emerge, but there is an O in who isn't, though. But then I kind of liked how interesting that slippage was, that kind of this kind of impulse to find a way to exist, even when one is kind of, one's existence is so radically denied that it seems kind of a foregone conclusion that one won't exist. So even in the reprint, my publisher was like, you've spent more time with the book now. Is there any kind of thing that needs to be kind of changed before the second printing? I was like, no, not going to change it, going to keep it there. But then also as a result of writing these poems, people keep sending me articles about de-extinction and species revivalism. So it also just seems in keeping with the way in which things happen in the world, and kind of this also this kind of underlying impulse to thrive that I'm interested in. And when I was at Kansas University earlier in the week with some ecology students and a botanist, we were working on re-extinction poems in the classrooms together, and it was an interesting way to kind of celebrate what's in front instead of what's not available. So I have been thinking about those things too. I'm going to read one more piece from Goners, which I do have copies of if you're interested in having after the reading. And then I'm going to tell you a little bit about where my work is going now and read you a piece from that. Dugong, an extinction. Here's a beastless fable, a feckless tale, a sea sick with rhythm. A trawl's empire has 12 fish, excess shrimp, yesteryear's kelp palaces, plastics as empires have, at the behest, at the helm. A machete clears. Here's a fable. All the beasts keep their all. Malaise sets, celestial-like, a hemisphere at a time. Time is feral, after all, yet trackable. If a library is with bestiary, as a wife is with babe. Prepare a lap, alter a breast, alter it. What lives is a liver, a part, a piece, a meerkat that's a clapper that strikes the mammal bell. And since finishing up this project, I've moved on to working to extend the work of the experimental Danish poet Inger Christensen, who has a book beloved by people who tend to love environmental literatures, translated from the Danish to the English by Susanna Nied, a longtime collaborator with Christensen, so a different kind of translation than sometimes we're able to have access to, because both of the writers were such in constant conversation during the kind of initial writing of this book, already in a translating relationship with one another. So this book, Alphabet, does an interesting thing. It intersects the abecedarian, which is composing from A to Z, with the Fibonacci sequence, which is that wonderful kind of spiraling sequence, often called the so-called nature or language of nature, right? So we have this kind of alphabet, kind of a metonym for human language, and then the Fibonacci sequence, the so-called language of nature. And so the first poem in her series focuses on A and is 1 line, the second poem B, 2 lines, then 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 34, and so on. She stops her project at N, which makes sense given that N is for number and for noun, both in the Danish and the English. But also that poem N should have been 477 lines based on kind of the dictates of the Fibonacci sequence, but instead ends at 321 lines, so 3, 2, 1, a kind of countdown. So I feel like her work has always just had a kind of a very kind of aspirational urgency to it, and I've always just kind of, it's a book I return to and teach, so I've always wanted to kind of end the alphabet, which is what I cheekily say I'm doing now. I'm ending the alphabet. But what I really mean is I'm continuing Christensen's project and picking up now at O, which I've almost finished, and then I'll be moving to P. And it might be a project that I don't finish in my lifetime. Then the sections get a lot longer. My O section is 789 lines. P is significantly longer. So it might be something that hopefully someone else will pick up after my work on it is where it can go. So I'm going to read one piece from this, and then we'll move to whatever the next part is. Alphabet, continued. O. With their diverse pollination strategies, with the mosquito need of some that revises the mosquito in one's mind, on one's skin, so often thought intolerable, orchids exist. Miniature orchids one needs a magnifying glass to observe. Wild orchids exist, risk vanishing as the insects that sex them vanish. But before they vanish, one evening, we order chiliguaro and offer our takes on whether eating ceviche on a boat after delighting in swimming alongside fish, alongside filter-feeding whale sharks with inscrutable teeth, is obscene. With its antioxidants and the joyful mountain cemented in its name, oregano exists. Oregano exists at the intersection of the culinary and the medicinal, in fields, sunny, conceptual, in areas where one might expect opportunism, the monetizing of wellness, the telling rhyme of health with wealth, the potency of access. The length of lasting, the outage exists, with its estimated time of restoration, the outage and the update, the hour later, the hour again delayed. The oracle high on methane had existed, high priestesses, thick with utterances, tongue a churn in the mouth, the future a butter spread on the bread of consciousness, the words eaten up, but the message undigested. In a notebook, a record of ordnance tattooed on a bicep, on an inner wrist, the body a placeholder, a placemat for the cracked plate of memory, the wrong knife for managing tenderness. The contrasting plumage and onomatopoetic name of orioles. Orioles, the sight of which was once thought to cure jaundice, exist inside and outside of song. Their song, this song, their, our, such distinctions exist. Ostracism akin to the loss of bone mass, but that here, bone is thought to not be weakened by what's gone. Oxeye daisies and osteoporosis, the celestial equator's belt, oxeye daisies and the obstruction of stars, the star loss of constellations, nights thinning. Never the outcry so cried out, dried up, to dehydrate, to outsmart rot, to swing for the outfilled's gap, to find a way home. All that is over that continues to exist. The overcharge, the overextension, the overstock and oversaturation. Within the egg of the oviparous animal, the nourishing yolk. Within the amniotic sac, the buoyancy-enabling pea one makes oneself. One makes oneself exist. The good egg's good job. With shifts in ocean temperature and seawater chemistry, existing ocean climates are vanishing. But before they vanish, one evening, we peel skins from flash-boiled, then ice-shocked tomatoes that we then core and crush and can. The putting to death of microorganisms, the strategic use of heat, one subsistence a challenge to another's existence. One of us opens the opinel and severs the stringless string beans, keeping them separate from the string beans with strings. Resourcefulness exists, reuse. The original label for Ocean View brand refugee wax beans crossed out and printed over with emergency label early June peas, now an object d'art. The upside down straw flower omitting its moisture for the woody yawn of the wreath, and on occasion multi-headed, a golden Cerberus one retrieves near the gates. The dupe of the pink and white orchid mantis should not be judged, neither the officiant referencing the script. Think like an occupation, to be that which earns a living. Think like an off-season, and quiet down. Think like the varnish restoring the oil painting's vibrancy, a consolidant that prevents further deterioration. The narrow want to be omnivorous, the onerous newly light. With advancements in minimally invasive techniques, open heart surgery is being bypassed when it can. But for now, while one lies open, while some contemplate the work of vessels, repair depends on disruption. The clementine's opening reveals the coral-shaped pith, albedo harbored in the core, the vanishing reef displaced by mimicry. As an orange hue, coral keeps existing. Thank you.